the central issue of our time. I think it is the force that's shaping our political and social world. It is the primary factor driving the tribalism that we heard on the phone calls. You could hear the visceral reactions in some cases, but differently than, let's say, calling Trump an authoritarian, or let's say the Democrats communists or socialists. There is a solution to this, and that's a broad-based consensus on how we deal with immigration. Whether it's more restrictive or less restrictive, everyone needs to feel like they have their voice heard, and I don't think we have to date. I think many Americans feel like all of a sudden they woke up and America's different, and that's disconcerting. There's a lot of trepidation about it. But there is a solution to this problem, at least in the short to medium term, which is some sort of consensus-based solution.
The book, again, is Nativist Nation, Populism, Grievance, Identity, and the Transformation of American Politics. The author is Cliff Young of Ipsos Public Affairs. We always appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
CSPANshop.org is C-SPAN's online store. Browse through our latest collection of C-SPAN products, apparel, books, home decor, and accessories. There's something for every C-SPAN fan, and every purchase helps support our nonprofit operations. Shop now or anytime at CSPANshop.org.
If you missed your favorite nonfiction author, you can find all of our programming online at booktv.org. Just use the search bar at the top of the page.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Richard Nixon Presidential Library Museum. My name is Joe Lopez. I have the honor of serving as the acting president and CEO of the Richard Nixon Foundation. It's so great to see so many friends and supporters and new faces here at the Nixon Library tonight, which is sure to be a great event with a few special guests. Many of you are members of the Richard Nixon Foundation. I want to thank you for your support, and many of you are supporters of our American Civics campaign. Thank you for your commitment to our mission and our work to help young Americans understand their history, their government, and their Constitution. Tonight's program is part of the Sean and Leland Smith Distinguished Speaker Series, which brings influential voices from around the country and tonight around the world right here to the Nixon Library for conversations that challenge, inform, and inspire our audiences. We're grateful to Sean and Leland Smith for their vision and generosity in making this series happen. And tonight we have one of the most recognizable voices in the world, Mr. Piers Morgan. He is the host of Piers Morgan Uncensored, a show that has become a global arena for fearless debate, bold opinions, and major news. Piers has interviewed presidents, prime ministers, and cultural icons from all over the world. And tonight, he's here to share insights from his brand new book. You all have it in your hands. It's called Woke is Dead: How Common Sense Triumphed in an Age of Total Madness. It's a very timely look at truth, free speech, at reason, themes that connect directly to what the Richard Nixon Foundation is doing with the American Civics Campaign. Common sense and critical thinking are making a comeback, and they're needed in America today. Joining Piers tonight is our good friend Jennifer Horn. You know her as the voice of the Morning Answer on AM 870 Salem Radio, right here in LA and Orange County. Please join me in welcoming Piers Morgan and Jennifer Horn.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to say, when the title of your book gets a round of applause, you know you've chosen the right title.
And I want to say thank you and good evening. And you know, we have some construction going on here at the Nixon Library. The ballroom is being constructed. So thanks for making it out past the cranes, we appreciate it. It'll be open in spring of 2026 with the golden toilet, you'll be happy. All right, so Piers, congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
It is fantastic. I read it this weekend. You guys will love it. And I think before we start, I have to be polite. What are your desired pronouns?
Well,
Hot and hotter?
actually, I have them as on my bio, I think on X. They're hot, hotter, and hottest. So, and whenever I meet my woke friends, I do insist on them using them. So these angry little joyless wokies have to look at me and go, hotter, hottest. It drives them nuts, but you know, they have to respect my pronouns. So
All right, so hottest.
hottest will do fine.
Okay, I like it. So obviously there must have been a catalyst for you. I mean, there's a lot of craziness. We all know that. Woke culture has exploded. Thankfully, it seems to be coming back to the center again. But what was the catalyst where you said, this is the book I have to write, and this is the time I have to write it?
So I was walking through Kensington in West London, beautiful place, and an Australian lady came up to me, and she said, "Mr. Morgan, I hope you don't mind me interrupting your morning walk," she said, "but these wokies," I said, "Yes." She said, "they just want to suck the joy out of life. Don't let them get away with it." And I thought, bingo, that's exactly what it is. If you think about it, the woke mind virus, as Elon Musk calls it, is about sucking all the joy out of life. They basically want to stop us all laughing at jokes, enjoying television, enjoying movies. They want to tell us how to dress, how to speak. They want to bully us into apologizing for absolutely everything. We can't revere any historical figures. They're all damaged. And so on and so on. And if you put it all together, well, what are you left with? There's no point being here, is there? You can't drink, you can't do anything, you can't do anything fun. Who wants to be a wokie? So I was sort of thinking, all right, we've got something about this. We can't let this just take over our lives. And it felt like to me there was a kind of irony about it, because if you ask the average, very woke left, so-called progressive, I call them regressive, person, you say to them, right, what's the thing you hate most in the world? And they go, fascists. Okay, and they call everybody fascist. They would call all of us fascists. They call me fascist. They call Donald Trump not just a fascist, but a Nazi, and so on. Everyone's either a Nazi or a fascist in the woke world. And yet, look at the way they behave. The scolding, the vilifying, the shaming, the cancelling, and as we've seen recently with Charlie Kirk, eventually, the murder of somebody for expressing his right to free speech, for having opinions they don't like. That is a form of fascism, right there. So they're actually behaving in a way that I think is exactly the way that they claim they hate in other people. And, you know, I've studied liberalism. I used to identify, don't hate me, I used to identify as a bit of a liberal. You know, I'm like, okay, let people get on with their lives, socially a pretty liberal guy. I have nothing in common with this woke left stuff. Nothing. And I just felt it was time to write a book to sort of put in order all the most ridiculous things that have happened in the last few years. And they are ridiculous. In 30 years' time, maybe earlier, maybe next year actually, they're going to look back on this period and think, let me get this straight. Let me get this absolutely straight. Women spent 100 years trying to win equality and rights. The right to vote, the right to work, and all these things. And after 100 years, the woke brigade came along and said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to allow 6'5" biological men to compete against you in sport to make sure you can never win again. And everyone was told, if you don't sign up to this, if you don't agree with that, then you are a fascist. So shut up. This is going to happen. And so it began to happen, more and more. A year ago, the United Nations worked out nearly 1,000 medals that should have been won by girls and women were taken and given to trans athletes. Now, I have nothing against trans people. I'm not transphobic. I don't hate trans people. I want them to have the same rights to fairness, equality, and safety that I have and we all enjoy, but not at the expense of eroding women's rights. Period. And today, as we meet with wonderful timing, we were talking about this earlier, the Olympic Committee is about to announce, apparently, that they are banning trans athletes from the Olympics. And when people say, well, you know, what can trans athletes do? I don't want them to stop being able to play sport, but they are biological males. They can compete against biological males. That would be fair, physically. Many of them, indeed most of them, have done that far less successfully, it should be noted, before, and then they compete against women far more successfully because they have a physical advantage. Or they can have a new category. As more and more trans athletes emerge, have your own category. I've got no problem with that. It doesn't stop them playing sport. But what was fascinating to me, the leaked stories about this Olympic decision apparently say that after extensive research, we have realised that men have a physical advantage over women. And I'm like, really? How much extensive research did you do? I mean, it is kind of mind-boggling, isn't it? Because there's obviously a reason we separate the sexes. Now, we're in California. I've got to tell you about this. A couple of weeks ago on my show Uncensored, I interviewed a woman called Betty Yee. Are you familiar with Betty Yee? She came on ostensibly to attack Katie Porter, which, let's be honest, is a bit of a home run at the moment. So, and I mean, Katie Porter, she's the one with who screams at all her assistants. You know what I'm talking about? Get out of my shop!
And the mashed potatoes, don't forget the mashed potatoes.
Good luck when she's your governor. Get out of my way, you people! But Betty Yee came on to criticise Katie Porter, and I said, it was interesting. I said, I was on the Bill Maher show with Katie Porter last year, and we got into this issue of trans athletes. I was defending Riley Gaines, who's been very courageous about this, and Katie Porter started having a go at me, saying, of course it's fair, and so on. And the audience, it's a very liberal audience, cheered me, not Katie Porter. She was like stunned. In that moment, I saw the eyes sort of, whoa, hang on, what's happening here? And Betty Yee came on to, I mentioned this, and then she said, well, actually, I kind of agree about the trans athletes. Really? I said, so look, the Olympics are coming to LA. Would you endorse gender-neutral Olympics? I was joking. I thought I was joking. She was a completely straight face, not joking, said, I would, yes. So, if she becomes, she's a candidate to be the governor of this great state. I have a home in Beverly Hills. She is going to be potentially our governor. And when the Olympics comes here in a couple of years' time, she wants to have gender-neutral Olympics. Now, they have calculated, if that was to happen, if men and women competed together in the Olympics, that women might win 2 bronze medals in the entire Olympics. So it would basically be the end of women's sport as we know it. And this is a candidate to be the governor of the great state of California. I find that horrifying. And I think in years to come, they'll look back at this period of the woke period with utter flabbergasted amusement that this was ever allowed to happen. So that's why I've done the book.
And we're here, the birthplace of Title IX. Women's sports mean something at the Richard Nixon Library and, of course, everywhere. All right, so you have been canceled. The thing about the woke mob, the wokesters, as you call them, is that they love to cancel you. They love to punish you. They love to bully you and fire you. I mean, in what was so incredible, and I hate to even say the words Meghan Markle. I apologize.
I always get PTSD when I hear that.
I know. Believe me, we're both Dodger fans. When I saw her at the World Series,
Oh, she's not a Dodger
I know.
fan.
I was like, get out of here. Please.
And that video of her with Harry sitting there like Mogadog. She's going like a sort of demented gerbil. It was absolutely unbelievable. Anyway, don't even get me started. You haven't got me started.
You must feel good though, because you called her out early on, and now I think the rest of the world has caught up with you. But my question is, the firings, the cancellations, it happened to you, but it also happened to your friends. How did that impact you? And I'm talking about Sharon Osbourne and others who defended you.
Well, let's remember, I mean, they went on Oprah Winfrey. I called it a 2-hour whine-a-thon, where 2 of the most rich, frivolous, spoiled brats you'll ever meet in your entire life decided to go on national television and just moan about how awful their lives are. And they trashed their families, they trashed the monarchy, they trashed my country. And I was watching this, I was doing a morning show in Britain. It's going very well. We trebled the ratings in 5 years. It was on fire. We were beating the BBC finally. It was great. And then I was watching this, and there was a moment early on when they said, I can't remember which one of them said, I think she said it, that the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's the senior churchman in Britain, had secretly married, do you remember this? Had secretly married them in their back garden 3 days before the televised wedding. Now, we did a quick bit of research. I thought, that can't be right. And sure enough, if that had happened, the Archbishop of Canterbury would have broken the law and been dragged off to a prison cell. So I thought, well, they're obviously just lying. And then they started saying all this stuff about racism and how the royal family were concerned about the skin colour of their unborn. It was all complete, I thought, baloney. None of it rang true to me. And so I said so. Now, last time I checked, we live in a free democratic society here and in the UK. I've got to say, your First Amendment protects you better than we have in our country at the moment. In our country, comedians are being arrested at airports for stupid jokes, right? It's ridiculous. But I just remember thinking, I don't believe this. If I say so, I just don't believe it. The other guests on the show believed it. Okay, whatever. I'm entitled to disbelieve you. I can disbelieve you or any of you. You can disbelieve everything I'm saying right now. We are allowed to do that in a democracy. But I wasn't allowed to do that. 57,000 wonkies reported me to Ofcom. We have a television regulator in the UK called Ofcom. You don't really have that here, so it's a different company. You kind of do a bit, but Ofcom accepted these complaints. 50,000, so 57,000, a world record number of complaints.
Congratulations.
I did that. We're into the Olympic build-up. I was quite chuffed with that, you know. You're going to go big, then go big. And then an interesting thing happened. I was told, look, if you apologise to Meghan Markle, who had rung the female boss of my network, and apparently I then sent a letter which began, I write to you as a woman and as a mother. You've got to fire him. I was like, ooh. So I was told, look, if you apologise to Meghan Markle for disbelieving her, you can stay. You can keep your job. I said, and if I don't, then you have to leave. I said, you know what? I'll take the leave option. And I walked out that moment. And what's been interesting is that 5 months later, Ofcom came back with their report into these world record number of complaints. And they rejected all 57,000 of them. They said it would have been a chilling infringement of my free speech rights to not be able to say what I said that day. Because it was an honestly held opinion, should have been allowed to say it. But why was a media company being told that by a television regulator? Why hadn't they worked that out? You know, and now, the irony of ironies, I would now be fired if I believed Meghan Markle.
That's true.
So, look, I wasn't really cancelled. It turned out I then landed the biggest deal of my life on the back of it because people rallied to support me, which was great. I was very grateful. But what happened to Sharon Osbourne was really disgusting. That she was co-hosting The Talk on CBS, had done for 10 years. A job she loved, a job she was really good at. And I don't know if you remember this particular episode, but Cheryl Underwood, who was one of her co-panelists, a black panelist, because it was important, I think, because she played the race card against Sharon. And she said, Sharon, why did you support someone who said racist things? Me? I've never said a single racist thing about anybody, let alone Meghan Markle. Go check. There is not a record of a single racist sentiment I've ever expressed. I don't care about her race, her skin colour. I just care that she's incredibly annoying and trashes and trashes the royal family all the time. I can't stand it. But that's something to do with her skin colour. And Sharon said, what are you talking about? What racist things? And then there was this awkward standoff. And Sharon Underwood clearly prepared all this and said, well, it's not so much that he said racist things, it's just the way he said things, you know, was like that. And Sharon's like, what are you talking about? So they then have a commercial break, and it's all getting very tense. And it got really tense. And eventually Sharon Underwood said, well, look, I don't want you to think I'm accusing you of being racist. And Sharon said, I think you'll find that ship has sailed. And sure enough, it had. Sharon was immediately branded a racist for supporting a racist, even though I'd never said a racist thing at all. And then she was bullied by the woke mob. She received death threats. She couldn't leave her home. She was absolutely traumatized by this. Then they bullied her into making a public apology, where she wept and apologized, made no difference. The mob kept coming, and she got fired. For what? For defending my right to free speech. She didn't even say she agreed with what I said. And she got fired, and she had the most traumatic year of her life. You know, nearly took her life. I mean, think about that. Lost a job she loved, felt suicidal because she stood up for a friend. We've known each other a long time. We did America's Got Talent together. And that's what happened to her. When people on the left say cancel culture doesn't exist, it's just accountability, all this kind of stuff we hear all the time. I saw that happen. And that was a deliberate attempt to destroy her life, playing a wicked race card against her, where racism had nothing to do with any of it. And that's what we were dealing with. And so many people have had similar experiences. And so I think this book, hopefully, will be the kind of death knell to an ideology which has been incredibly insidious to democracy and to society. We should get back to being able to express ourselves freely and honestly, get back to having fun, get back to, coming together, people with different opinions and tolerating them. I grew up in a country pub. And in my pub, it was very egalitarian. You'd have the lord of the manor, and you'd have the local bricklayer or carpenter, and they'd all be the same. They'd all be drinking, they'd all be arguing, and then at the end of the night, they'd hug each other and go back up. What happened to that? What happened to those days? I want to get that back. And I think we can. We just have to play whack-a-mole with the wokies. So every time a wokie raises their joyless head, boom, we whack them back.
Okay, so let's talk about what caused, maybe it had to get so bad for it to start to get better. It seems like everything came to a head during COVID. You had Black Lives Matter, you had George Floyd. What was it that brought that perfect storm of wokeism?
Well, people were at home, they were angry, they were on the internet all the time, they wanted to feel like they were, getting attention. And we live in a very attention-seeking era now, driven by social media. It's a very me, self-obsessed era. I was talking backstage about the lack of civic duty that so many young people in particular seem to have. The only duty they seem to feel is to themselves, but at the same time, they're anxious, they're depressed, some of them are suicidal. There's a real issue going on with young people. And their brains are getting scrambled by all this negative dopamine from, you think when I was a teenager, you had no way of seeing gruesome images from war zones and stuff. Everything was, you were protected. Now think about it, I've got 4 kids, they see everything. They see the most terrible things from Gaza, from Ukraine, from Wizzy. And add to that, you then have what I call the sort of rabbit hole stuff that goes on, where they get on the social media and they get led deliberately by the tech companies through the algorithms down these rabbit holes, and then they lasso themselves to groups that may be very nefarious in their intention. They want your money, they want your clicks, and all the rest of it. And before you know it, they get radicalized. I really do think a lot of the woke left have been radicalized. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen on the right, it can do. The extreme right have their own issues. But the radicalization of so many young people to this so-called progressive woke left was pretty scary. They really did turn into a bunch of fascists. And I think that's what, the reason I say I think woke is dead is not that it's actually dead yet, but it's certainly dying. And Donald Trump's re-election to me, I talk about this in the book because I ring him in the morning after he wins. I think he made a little comment in his speech when he won about that there was a core of common sense which drove him back to the White House. I completely agree. Whether you like Trump or not, I happen to like him. We've had a long 20-year relationship. I was his celebrity apprentice the first time you may remember.
I like that.
Some of you are too young to remember, but all I remember is that just before he made me a celebrity apprentice, the first scene of the celebrity one, he said, "Pierce, you're vicious, you're tough, you're possibly brilliant, I don't know." He said, "But you beat the hell out of everybody, you're my celebrity apprentice." And when he became president in 2016, I sent him a note Donald, you're vicious, you're tough, you're possibly brilliant, I don't know, but you beat the hell out of everyone, and you're the President of the United States. But I do think Trump, you know, what I think his qualities, and there are lots, look, he's not perfect. He wouldn't even claim him somewhere, he probably would claim he's perfect, but he has a style about him, where there are lots of things about him, particularly that last year, which I think are really admirable. As everyone was trying to jail him for absolutely everything, as everyone was trying to literally assassinate him, as people were trying to throw everything at this guy to stop him in his tracks, he just showed remarkable mental strength and resilience. You're never going to like him to appreciate that. And I thought when he stood up after he got shot and said, fight, 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 that was an amazing moment. And I spoke to him a week later, and I said, I think that's the moment you won the election. I think a lot of independents went, wow, that's badass to do that. It was, and it was ballsy, you know. And at least with Trump, you know what you're getting. He's doing now what he said he'd do. You may not like it. Some of it's a bit too blunt for my liking. But a lot of it, you know, take the southern border. I say to my liberal friends, how can you not look at what he's done on the southern border and just think that is a tremendous success and a great thing for America? And even then, they won't give an inch. They'd rather hate him. And this Trump derangement thing is a real thing. They're so just hateful about him, they can't ever give him credit. And there are lots of things I could criticize him for. But you've got to give credit where it's due. And I think at the core of Trump is a core of common sense. You know, if he wasn't Donald Trump, and he went out there to most countries right now, and he said, right, I'm going to cut the taxes. Oh, that's nice. I'm going to strengthen your border. Oh, that sounds good. I'm going to be tougher on serious crime. Oh, thanks, finally, someone's doing that. I'm going to engage in fewer foreign wars. Blimey, really? This is great. And then you go through a checklist, and eventually you go, yeah, I quite like the sound of that. Trumpism, it's not a bad thing. And, you know, I just think that this core of common sense was the antidote the world didn't realize it needed for the woke mind virus. And that they had nowhere to go, because after 4 years, or 8 years, including the first 4 years when he served, and then the 4 when he was out of office, of telling us all he's the new Hitler, he's this, he's that, he's the worst thing ever. We saw Nancy Pelosi last week calling him the worst human being in the world, which will have come as news to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, right? And the Ayatollahs in Iran. So a ludicrous overinflation, in a pretty hateful way actually, from the so-called Be Kind party. And, you know, so I think that the woke mind virus has had its antidote in the form of Trump. And it's returned things to a more even playing field. And thank goodness for that. And so I just think as we go forward, the danger is don't let it get, it's like weeds in a garden. Everyone who's garden, probably a lot of gardeners here. You know, and the weeds, you have to get rid of them quickly. Don't let it come back and be the scourge of our society again. Because it really was a joyless scourge. We're finally on day release, and we can go for full liberation. Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be nice. One of the things that you talked about in the book is something that's been close to my heart too, as a problem that I really identify in our society, and that is that we have a man problem. And we are no longer raising, or we weren't at least raising strong men. And then, God forbid, if you were a strong man, you'd be called, you know, exhibiting toxic masculinity. You talk about this in the book. Civilizations have collapsed without strong men. And
what even is toxic masculinity?
It's a great question.
I don't believe it's ever existed. Because masculinity is not toxic. There's nothing wrong or toxic about being strong, about being having a natural desire to protect others, to hunt and provide, to be stoic, to be tough when it's needed, to be empathetic when it's needed. These are all masculine qualities, right? I don't think most of the men in here recognize the word toxic when they're being masculine. So I think it's been hijacked, that word. There are bad men. Here's a secret. There are some bad women too. Some of them may be in this room.
Yeah, I see a few.
I'm looking around and thinking, yeah. But that's the reality. And we don't call bad women toxic. Well, actually, some of them do, but it's not used nearly as much. I had a guy called Chris Williamson come on my show recently. Really interesting podcast, English guy. And he was talking about all the things in the news headlines that have been blamed in the last year on toxic masculinity.